Hi, folks. Welcome. We still have some folks jumping in the waiting room, so we'll give it another minute.
Rick, you should.
Wait, there's a gray remote. Isn't there in here? I swear, I used it.
I don't know where they put it. Everything was moved.
It's on. If it's here, then usually it's either on the device or it's on the TV, the gray one. And so what you would do in like DVD, you hit this button after you're done to finalize. See the arrow? That's your finalize button.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And this is the last week for camp, so.
For the whole summer?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then once we start doing Saturday drop-ins and that stuff, we won't have to. We'll make sure that everything's cleaned up by the time it's done.
Do you know when they're going to go to, Sundays and all that?
Sundays are starting this Sunday.
This Sunday?
Yeah, Joel said we could just close the gate if we really want somebody to staff it, we can. But other than that, we'll probably just he encourages us to be like, you can close the gate. We don't need to be open on Sunday if we don't want to be.
Could stick Mary on it or something.
I know. I was gonna. Mary told me that I should send a message if she's going to do all of Saturday or just Saturday. And so I'm taking Wednesday off, so I can do Saturday all day. So I'm gonna do Saturday all day.
So you don't need her at all?
Well, I need her when I'm doing those classes and orientation or anything like that. But I need to stay at the library all day Saturday. So you can tell her that.
Because Joel's been telling her.
Not unmute. Please try to mute yourself. Thank you so much.
But I've been really
We have a lot of us, so it's a bit challenging to go through and figure out who it is.
Okay. It's like I won't need her for the full time. But just let her know.
Okay.
I'm gonna do all day Saturday and she's gonna come and.
All right.
This will be at 10 o'clock.
Hi, folks. We'll get started, and we have our trusty team of moderators admitting folks if they're hopping on while we get going. But my name is Shibu Ahrens. I am the chair of the Missoula County Democratic Party. And I just want to express my deep appreciation for you all for being here on Zoom again, when we were looking forward to being able to do this event in person. And I want to express my thanks for the candidates as well for being flexible while we worked through changing COVID numbers and while we worked through communicating things out to our members. So thank you, members, for being here on Zoom, and thank you, candidates, for being here on Zoom to join us. And we're going to start out with the program. We have municipal judge candidates and city council candidates and mayoral candidates on the call. And we will first hear from our municipal judge candidates, but I want to be fully clear that we are not endorsing in the municipal judge races as a political party. We do not endorse and would not endorse in any judicial race. But this is an opportunity for folks who are going to be on the ballot to say hello to our great membership and to introduce themselves. And so we'll hear from the municipal judge candidates first. And again, if you're a candidate and you recently jumped on, if you could add the office that you're a candidate for behind your name, if you could rename yourself and add that office, that would make it easier for everyone to identify you as well. After municipal folks, we will hear from mayor candidate, and then after mayor, we will hear from our city council candidates. And we have a set of questions that are based off of the questionnaires that we sent out that we'll be asking a portion of. And then immediately following that, we'll move to our special city council meeting where we'll vote to approve the rules, and then we'll vote to endorse candidates based on the questionnaires and based on the questions that the answers and the questions that we have today. So we'll start with the program with our municipal judge candidates. And I believe that it makes the most sense to go in alphabetical order. So I believe candidate Jacob Coolidge is on the call. And Jacob, if you would turn on your video and unmute yourself, we'll hear from you first. And we'll go for 3 minutes. And I actually forgot to mention, I will also be the timer. And I have a trusty light that I will shine when you have 15 seconds left, just as a heads up for everyone. So I thank everyone for being here, and good to see you all. And Jacob Coolidge, take it away.
Thank you, Shibu. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to talk to you all. My name is Jacob Coolidge. I'm running for Municipal Court Judge in Department 3. I currently am employed as a public defender. I represent people right now in district court charged with felonies in Missoula County. I originally kind of cut my teeth, I guess, as a lawyer in municipal court for a couple of years. But the reason I'm drawn to run is kind of because of my mixed background. Prior to being an attorney, I was a criminology professor at the university. I taught initially introductory level criminology classes, but eventually upper level criminology classes at the university. Before and during and after law school. I also did a great deal of applied research. I'm very much motivated by criminal justice reform. My research has typically focused on things like the policing of shelter-resistant homeless populations in Missoula pursuant to the panhandling ordinances, disproportionate representation of minority youth in the juvenile justice system, the efficacy and validity of pretrial risk assessment instruments, and statewide jail conditions with a report that I co-authored for the ACLU. So all of my academic interest was really in applied sociology and criminology that focused on local criminal justice systems that kind of had a motivating factor of criminal justice reform. After law school, I ran a criminal justice reform initiative out of the law school that focused on interdisciplinary research measures and funded research projects with professors throughout the university. So I was integrated in interdisciplinary research and reform. After doing that for a while, I wanted to get involved in the criminal justice system more directly and became a public defender. My desire to run for this position is largely rooted in the fact that I believe criminal justice reform is most appropriate and necessary at the local levels. And I think municipal court is ripe for reform and has been for a while. I think that the previous approach has been too heavy-handed and too punitive and perhaps relied too much on jail and warrants, in an approach that's been obviously costly to taxpayers, but also not particularly effective in decreasing misdemeanor criminality. I think that my mixed background of academics and law provides a unique approach that can inform a more informed and evidence-based approach to misdemeanor criminality that actually identifies and deals with the underlying causes of misdemeanor criminality and recognizes the truth that it cannot be punished away, and that specific deterrence isn't necessarily an effective means to crimes that are oftentimes associated with poverty or mental illness. And my objective is to try and use my knowledge and research and background to try and make a more effective Missoula municipal court system that goes further with Missoula County and city taxpayer dollars, and that is more effective at addressing the underlying causes of misdemeanor criminality. So my goal is really to try and push the court forward in a way that more accurately and adequately represents Missoula values and kind of evidence-based practices. So that's what I'm hoping to bring to the bench, and that's why I'm running for judge in Department 3.
Thank you. Jacob, how well were you able to see me with the light, or was I not popping up on your screen?
You were
Just
not
to troubleshoot. Okay, I will holler then when I turn on the light in the future. I wanted to see how well it would work, so thank you for being the guinea pig. Great, thank you. Since you spoke for 3 minutes, 30 seconds, I'll give that to the other candidates as well. No, you timed yourself because I couldn't do my job properly, so I definitely appreciate sticking close to it. And I'll do 3 minutes, 30 for the other folks. I believe Judge Lerman is next alphabetically on my list. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute yourself, 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Can you hear me? Okay, Shiva?
I can hear you.
Yes, great. I don't know. Can you, my camera. I apologize, folks. My lighting and technical director is at dinner this evening, so I'm doing it myself. But anyway, thanks for letting me speak for a few minutes. My name is Ethan Lerman. I am a city and municipal court judge. I've been a judge for about 2.5 years, and prior to that, I've been an attorney in town for 17 years. I started out my legal career with Montana Legal Services, and then I moved over to the public defender's office. I was a public defender both in Helena and Missoula and Lake County for about 5.5 years. And then in 2010, I went into private practice for myself. I was in private practice until I was appointed as a municipal court judge by my boss, Judge Jenks. And I've been on the bench, like I said, for about 2.5 years. I became a lawyer to help people, and I bring that same goal to the court every day. I care about the people that end up in my court, and I believe strongly in second chances and getting people back on their feet. I went a different route in terms of a legal career. I didn't take any corporate jobs or big law firm jobs. I dedicated myself to public service. As a public defender and a lawyer for Montana Legal Services, I've worked hard to ensure that our low-income neighbors receive equal access to justice. I bring 17 years of practicing law to the bench, and I have the ability to create the change that our courts need. As you all know, probably very aware, very acutely, Missoula and specifically faces big issues when it comes to issues of access to mental health, access to substance abuse treatment, and housing. And I'm committed to making my court part of the solution with regard to those issues. I have been out in the community helping organize events to support our neighbors who have experienced homelessness. I spoke to students at local local Missoula public schools, and that's why I'm working to reform the courts, including doing away with cash bail system. I'm a proponent of extending hours for working families so that folks have an ability to come into court at alternative hours, alternative times, so they don't have to take time off from their job to appear in court, and just generally make Missoula's courts more accessible. I think what I bring to the table is obviously experience on the bench, 17 years practicing law prior to my 2.5 years on the bench. I have the ability to hit the ground running and to facilitate the change that we need. We've implemented some good changes, and there's still a long way to go. And I look forward to having a voice in the direction of the court going forward. And I feel like as a judge, it's been it gives me the best opportunity to continue serving the community that I love here in Missoula and make an impact and for change on both on people's lives and to continue supporting this great community that we have. So I look forward to taking any questions or comments. I know we're not going to have an opportunity to do it here today, but in the future, feel free to reach out, and I welcome folks to share their thoughts and sentiments with me. So thank you, Shibu, for the opportunity, and thanks to everyone for listening. And that's it.
Thank you, Judge Lerman. Next, we have municipal judge candidate Eli Parker.
Thanks, Shibu. And thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. This is a great opportunity to introduce myself to a lot of people I haven't met yet. And one thing about this race is that it's low information. We're trying to get our names out. And I in Missoula for 15 years. I started out in private practice with a former public defender who taught me that one of the most important parts of this job is relationships. Whether it's the folks in the office at the clerk's office, a prosecutor, but most importantly, getting to know the people that we represent and understanding why they are in the position that they're in so that we can better work with the system to make it work the way that we all need it to. And for the last, I started out in the municipal court. I started out for several years. That's where I learned to practice as a trial attorney. From there, I went to justice court and district court. And for the last 10 years, I've been doing civil commitments, which are little known because they're kept sealed. They're for folks that are facing psychiatric crisis. They may be a risk to themselves, someone else, or not able to take care of basic needs. But through that, for the last 10 years, I've built relationships with some remarkable individuals and programs in this town that are trying to do their best to help the people that need it the most. And I'm running for judge because I think that familiarity and those relationships will be something that's an enormous benefit to this court. Over the time that I've been familiar with it, I've seen the municipal court be a public resource. It's a place that people go for resolution of conflict and to be heard. And too often, though, although there have been benefits from the recent last decade in terms of organization, there's been, I believe, too much emphasis on incarceration and warrants. And it turns into a kicking the can down the road situation where people end up in jail, but then they're actually worse when they get out. And we have a list of people that are in and out like a revolving door from the jail, and it doesn't do anything for them. It costs us a lot of money, and it doesn't make the community any safer. So what we really need are good ideas. And that's what I will bring, and that's what I believe Jennifer Estriano will bring and Jake Coolidge will bring. To try and do something new to address things like trauma and mental illness and addiction and all the different factors like cultural background, sexual orientation, or what have you. And we're in a great position to be able to do that because we know this community from serving all of our members for well over a decade. So thank you for your time. And I see the red light. Thanks, Shiva.
Thank you. And next we get to hear from municipal court judge candidate Jennifer Estriano.
Thank you, Shibu. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time. My name is Jennifer Estriano, and I'm running for municipal court judge, along with along with Jake and Eli Parker. My background is also with the Public Defender's Office. I was with them for over 15 years. I went to law school here in Missoula, and soon after law school, I took a job with the Public Defender's Office in Helena, worked there for a few years before I was transitioned into a unit that they created with the Public Defender's Office called the Major Crimes Unit, where there were only 5 attorneys of us selected for the state, and we kind of covered the entire state, traveled throughout to handle kind of the high complex felony cases, primarily either homicide cases or other sort of complex cases. So I was with that unit for about 5 years. I saw a lot of Montana. Went from like Webo to Libby, pretty much saw the whole state. So that was one benefit. The other thing, I got to move back to Missoula, which was great. So I've been here again. And soon after that, I became the regional deputy for the Public Defender's Office here in Region 2, which is Missoula office, Mineral County, and then the office that we have in Ravalli County. So I supervised over about 25 attorneys. I had directly supervised administrative assistants, case managers, investigators. some roughly about 40 people that I was their direct supervisor. I recently just left that position and just have been private practice for a while I'm running for this position. I would say the main reason that I am running is that I strongly believe this court needs significant change. The past few years and longer, it's been running in a way that I don't think Missoula would support if they knew kind of what was going on. There's so much room for change, so much room for good ideas, and I think that I can bring those. I think we need to start prioritizing cases and how we handle them. I think that we cannot just treat all cases the same. Traffic offenses specifically, we need to use our resources better. I don't think if somebody they can't afford car insurance, then I don't think putting them in jail for 10 days or fining them hundreds of dollars is really an effective solution for that person. I think that we need to reduce barriers that are in their way to rehabilitate their driving privileges, whether that getting their license reinstated or doing what they can do to get their car insurance. Right now, that's the approach that's not being taken. It is incarceration, it is more fines. And so these people are just cycling through the courts, and that's creating backlog, and that's diverting resources that we could use for other offenses that are going on in our court. I also think that what I bring to the position is my kind of experience in leadership, running an office of multiple staff and multiple attorneys. I know how to put components together to make an office work and to make it run smoothly. And I think that needs to happen in the court as well. I also just bring experience. I guess I've been a lawyer for 15 years. I've seen courts, like I said, all throughout the state. I've seen what judges do in other counties, and I see what works and I see what doesn't work. And I would like to bring and share those experiences here in Missoula and to show what works and that we can do things better here in Missoula. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. And thanks to all the municipal judge candidates for joining us and introducing themselves. Thanks for taking the time. And it was good to hear from you all. Now we will move to the mayoral portion of our forum. And at this point, I will turn over the reins to our trusty friend, Nick Davis, who announces baseball in his spare time. And Nick is going to run you through the brief format for the mayoral portion, and we'll post some questions to our candidate. So Nick, it's all yours. And Nick, I believe you're muted. Sorry about that.
Okay, how about now? How are we doing?
Sounding good.
Excellent. Okay, we are, as Shibu noted, we are starting with the mayoral candidate, of which it's my understanding we have one in attendance. And what we will do is the mayoral candidate, each candidate, the one candidate in this case, will have 4 minutes to make an opening statement. They may delegate 1 minute of that time to a single person to make an endorsement speech. After the opening speech, we will ask a couple questions of the candidate. That candidate will then have 3 minutes to answer each of those questions. And then after that, those questions, we will have a close, again, another 3 minute space for the close. And Shibu will be keeping time on this portion as well. And I think we're going to try to keep that same method of showing the light when 15 seconds is remaining. So,
Nick, sorry,
yes,
if I could jump in, because I believe we've been trying the spotlighting feature so I'm visible, but it's proving to be a little bit buggy, and I don't want to interrupt the video feed. So I'll try not to be rude, but I'll just pipe up and say 15 seconds when we're there in case you can't see the light.
very good. I stand corrected. Okay, so without further ado, the one candidate that we have for possible endorsement, the incumbent Mayor John Engen. Thank you, John, for being here.
Well, thank you, Nick, and thank you all. I really appreciate the opportunity. This is the fifth time that I have asked the local Democratic Party to endorse me in pursuit of the office of mayor of the city of Missoula. But I take nothing for granted, and that's the reason I'm here tonight. I want to ensure that I have an opportunity to answer questions, hear feedback, and make my case. I'm running for mayor of the city of Missoula in large part for the same reasons that I ran the first time in 2005. I love this community. I love its people. And I believe that we have remarkable opportunities to work together to make the place better for everyone. And over the course of the last 16 years, that's what I've been engaged in doing, whether working on relatively small and mundane projects that keep the wheels on the wagon and keep the city running from day to day, or engaging in broad initiatives that will have impact for a very long time. This campaign for me is about addressing the issues that I think have been critical for some time and remain critical to our community. And those issues are expressed to us in a variety of ways, whether it's through a citizen survey that we conduct through the city of Missoula, through the comments we hear on Monday evenings during council meetings, through email, through media reports, and through conversations I have at the grocery store, the gas pump, or occasionally in a restaurant. Those issues today, I think, are three in particular. One is housing and its companion, homelessness. The other, I think, is the way we preserve the nature of the community, our built natural environment, and how we work on growth and development as our city continues to expand. And I think maintaining a quality of life for all of our residents, and ensuring that people aren't left out of the mix. And that's a growing challenge as we see nationwide, and certainly here in Missoula. The housing shortage that we face today is a long time coming. It's not contained in Missoula by any means. And it's also something we've been preparing for a long time. I've been talking about housing for 16 years, and we've made tremendous progress and strides, I think, in serving the community and ensuring that folks have a decent, safe place to live. That work is complicated, it's expensive, and it takes a great deal of time. But I tipped up the first housing office in the state of Montana at the city of Missoula, with the goal of creating a policy that ensured that all of our residents had access to that safe, decent, and we hope affordable housing. We've emphasized affordable housing as the greatest need, and I think the greatest opportunity. And I can tell you that because we've engaged in policy and practice in
15 seconds.
Oh, in housing, well, I'm not timing myself well. I feel what it's like to be on the other side of the microphone. Housing is a big deal, and I hope we have a chance to talk more about that.
Okay. John, did you have someone you wanted to speak on your behalf?
I don't.
You don't. Your record stands for itself.
It does, and frankly, I wasn't prepared for that endorsement. So if anyone would like to extemporaneously endorse, feel free to raise your hand.
Okay, well, let's move to the questions. The first question for you, sir, and again, you will have a up to 3 minutes to answer the question. In 2015, Missoula developed a 10-year plan to end homelessness. We're about 60% through that, 4 years left. How are we doing so far? And what specifically would you do to ensure support for Missoula homeless community and to improve the safety for individuals experiencing homelessness?
Thank you. That's a great question. As one of the partners in developing our 10-year plan to end homelessness, I can tell you that we have made tremendous progress again with a very complex and challenging problem that we're not alone in trying to work through. Our 10-year plan comes with lots of solutions, lots of policy decisions that needed to be made, and some still need to be made. But mostly what the plan calls for is collaboration and investment. So on the collaboration front, we've made remarkable progress in bringing organizations together who have traditionally operated in silos. These are talented, caring, compassionate, smart folks who are trying to solve a tough problem, but they are often trying to solve it alone. And through our coordinated entry system, we have not only gotten those agencies cooperating with one another, but we've eased the burden on the person who is experiencing homelessness by allowing them to have a single point of entry, a no wrong door, where they are welcomed, where we collect the data we need to identify the best way to get them housed. And they don't need to go from agency to agency shopping for help or answers. That coordinated entry system allows us to track those individuals, to help understand what kind of progress they're making, to identify some of the obstacles and barriers to their success, and to really apply our talents and the right people at the right time to helping them solve their problem. So there are lots of examples of sort of the meat and potatoes of creating an organization that makes it easier for folks experiencing homeless to find help and then get that help. The second, and I think as critical, if not more critical piece, is funding. So we are the first community in the state of Montana with an affordable housing trust fund. That was called out in our housing policy, and we are actively engaged in funding that and in building with partners a number of projects, the most significant of which for people who are currently unhoused is the Trinity Project. For the first time, we will have residences purpose-built in the city of Missoula for folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness, and the intention is to get them in the door and ensure that homelessness is a one-time experience for them and that it ends when they set foot in Trinity.
Very good, thank you. All right, your second question. 2 years ago, the Central Committee and others called upon the city to do a better job in responding to the continuing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Has the city responded appropriately? What additional steps do you think the city should take?
I believe we have responded appropriately, but I don't think our work is done there yet. And there are a number of ways that we're approaching this, but really first is, again, investment. We need to invest in the peace officers who are in a position to, in most cases, investigate these cases, but in other cases are trained to help prevent them. So we invest in training for our officers around human trafficking, and that goes a long way around prevention. We start to recognize situations, activities, and circumstances that lead us to investigate human trafficking. And in many cases, we're in a position, because we know that those individuals are out there trying to do harm, we're in a position to pay attention to them and prevent that harm. In the case of solving crimes afterwards, some of you might be familiar with Detective Guy Baker, who is likely the leading law enforcement officer in the state with regard to expertise in missing persons, and particularly in missing and murdered Indigenous persons. I believe that Detective Baker has lived at least a portion of every day since Jermaine Charlo went missing, in pursuit of finding Jermaine and solving the mystery of her disappearance. Guy has plenty of training, and he continues to train fellow officers. He has also worked with the Montana legislature, as we have, in trying to shore up laws and funding that helps prevent, again, some of these abductions and murders, and also applies additional resources to solving those crimes. We're not there yet, and we need very broadly to continue not only the training work that we've been doing, but we also need to continue to work on racial justice and equity in our community, which is a contributing factor to all of this.
Very good. Thank you, sir. That's going to wrap up the question part of it. You now have 3 minutes for any closing remarks that you choose to impart.
Well, thank you. So before I used all of my time in the preamble, we were talking a little bit about housing, and so the work we're doing, particularly around the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and building partnerships with the private sector, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit developers, is bearing considerable fruit. So if we look at our land banking program, we purchased almost 20 acres on Scott Street a little better than a year ago for the purposes of redevelopment. We did that through our Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and we're now deeply engaged with a partner to develop that property for affordable housing, both for ownership and also for rent, as well as some market rate product there, and some mixed use, including daycare. When municipal dollars are invested, we get better outcomes. We are able to address broader community needs than a developer might be able to do on his or her own. And so we have additional opportunities at the Sleepy Inn, corner of Broadway and Russell Street. We have an additional opportunity at Johnson Street, where Montana Rail Link Park is, and we have an additional opportunity at the Payne block, which is immediately to the west of our beautiful new library. These land banking investments allow us to buy down cost of land and to influence the type of development and its design. As we continue to move forward, we need to, pardon me, continue to invest in all of the services that make Missoula Missoula. None of this is exclusive, and little of it changes from election cycle to election cycle. We need good cops, and we need good parks. We need operating water and wastewater systems, and we need good planning. All of these municipal functions don't work unless we're continuing to make investment and continuing to try to improve those. I have never given up in 16 years on getting better at my job or making sure that the city of Missoula is better at its job collectively. And we intend to continue that work, working together, working with talented and committed individuals to make sure that Missoula is a great place for all of her residents.
Good. Thank you for your time tonight, John. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We can safely wish you good luck in your election.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to move on, folks, now to the city council candidates. Shibu, do we need a minute to get all the folks pinned up here on this front page?
I think because the spotlight feature has been bouncing people back and forth, I think we're just going to let the audio put
Very
people
good.
to the front, because
Okay.
that's more reliable than the spotlight.
Yeah. Works for me. All right. So the format for the city candidate questions will be 3 minutes for an opening statement, and as in the mayoral section, if a candidate wishes to choose a single person to speak on their behalf, they can have up to a minute to do so. We do ask that the candidate lets us know right from the beginning if they will have that person speaking for them, so we know when to switch over to that person. We also need to have that that person ready to go and to unmute. Shibu, is the intent then to move the spotlight to the speaker, the endorser?
Yes, or it will happen automatically when they speak.
All right. So 3 minutes for an opening statement, one of which can be used by a third party. After everyone's given their opening speeches, we will pose a few questions. Each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes to answer each question. After we complete the question, the longer question section, we will move to a lightning round in which the candidates will hold up a sign saying yes or no, one-word answers to a lightning round. Yes, and then we will, and then after the lightning round, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. So the order we've selected again follows the same format by ward and alphabetically for the introduction. We will reverse that order for the closing remarks, and the questions themselves. The order has been randomized by one of the most random devices I could find, which is my noggin, and I think it worked pretty well. So to begin with, we will begin with the opening statements now, and the first candidate will be Jennifer Savage, Ward 1 candidate. So let's.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
I'm sorry, before you start, do you intend to have someone endorse for you?
Yes, Katie Carlson.
Okay, so you get 2 minutes of your time and then 1 minute for the endorser.
Okay, great. I'm Jennifer Savage, and I'm running for City Council in Ward 1. Professionally, I have an undergraduate degree in journalism, and I spent a few early career years working as a newspaper reporter and a copy editor. I have a master's degree in literary nonfiction, and I have spent most of my career working for nonprofits in Missoula. I have, in doing that, I've worked for Blue Mountain Clinic, helping women access their health care. I've written grants on behalf of faculty and staff at the University of Montana. I've helped launch a healthcare foundation to improve the healthcare of Western Montanans. And most recently, I have helped nonprofit organizations and for-profit businesses tell their stories as a communications consultant. I have lived in Montana for 20 years, and I have lived in Ward 1 for 12 years. I grew up in North Carolina, the granddaughter of textile mill workers. I spent much of my early years at my grandmother's house. I watched her stand up for her community. I've watched other strong women stand up for their community. And this year, steeped in pandemic and sort of watching the world unfold, I was inspired by lots of women who decided to run for office for the first time. And I decided to stand up for my community and seek public office. Is Tyler, are you talking to me? No, it's okay. No, I just want to make sure. So the reason I'm interested in running
15 seconds.
Is the proximity of Ward 1, I believe, makes us particularly susceptible to the rapid growth that Missoula is experiencing. And I want to be a strong voice for my neighbors and my community. And I feel like I can be a good connector and someone who can work with other people and listen and help us have the hard conversations that we may need to have in the coming years.
Time.
Sorry about that. We thought that we were muted, and sorry. So I'm excited to introduce Jennifer. She's lived in Montana for 20 years. I've known Jennifer from being my sister's neighbor on the north side, and every interaction I've had with her has been so genuine and so just wonderful that I am excited to introduce her to the Missoula County Dems, and think she would be a great addition to Missoula City Council. And just thank you for running.
Okay, thank you. The next city council candidate, again from Ward 1, is Jane Van Fossen. Jane, are you ready to rock and roll?
Ready to rock and roll.
All right. Would you like to have somebody speak on your behalf?
No, not necessary.
Okay, so you'll have the full 3 minutes for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for you all for showing up tonight. It's always a pleasure to be amongst engaged citizens. My name is Jane Van Fossen. You can find me on Facebook, Jane 4 Ward 1. The 4 is a number, the 1 is a number. Or I have a website, jane4ward1.com. I'm a native Montanan. My hometown is Anaconda. I grew up in blue collar Anaconda. Got my undergraduate degree at the University of Montana. At that point in my life, I wanted to be in service and I wanted to see the world. So I joined the Navy, and I was, to the best of my knowledge, the first woman who was a commissioned officer sworn in as a general unrestricted line officer here in Montana. And I went off, as I say, to see the world. I married a naval aviator. I joined for 2 years, and because they kept giving me terrific jobs, 23 years later, I retired. I've had 12 job assignments with a great deal of variety. At one point, I developed and taught a college prep program for disadvantaged sailors who showed leadership potential, and it was called Broaden Opportunity for Officer Selection and Training. That was a very proud period of my career. Mostly I developed and managed large information systems. Spent about 17 years inside the Washington Beltway. And the reason I'm telling you all this is I understand bureaucracy and I understand systems. And along the way, I earned a master's in business administration. One reason that I wanted to point out I know bureaucracies is that I know the games that are played. I know the empires that people build in a bureaucracy, and I know how the financial games are played. Nobody ever asks to have their budget reduced in the government. Last year during the COVID lockup, I did what systems analysts do. I analyzed the heck out of the system of our city government. And what I found was that we have a government of 700 full-time employees, nearly. And it's a system that expends about $200 million a year. What I did was tracked the development of the fiscal 21 budget very carefully. That took place a year ago. The fiscal 22 budget is being put together as we speak. Every Wednesday, the city council is hearing information from each of the departments. What the city's managed through 160 funds, and those are like
15 seconds.
Those are like checking accounts. So money moves through those accounts in and out. And basically what I would do on city council is the force for financial transparency, which I believe needs a lot of improvement in our city government right now. And again, you can find me on Jane 4, Ward 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane. The next candidate to be heard from, again, the third and final candidate from Ward 1 is Sheena Comer Winterer. Sheena, you ready to go?
I am. Hi.
Will you be having anyone speak on your behalf?
I will. Carmen Corona, please.
Very good. You'll get a 15-second warning when your 2 minutes is almost up.
Okay.
And if you could be at the ready, we would appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Sheena. This is a great opportunity to introduce myself if I haven't met you. I'm a longtime Missoula resident. I'm a longtime small business owner, and I have been in the housing industry in Missoula for 26 years. I think it's already been mentioned, but housing is one of the crucial issues that we face. Affordable housing, middle housing, or workforce housing. And I know that being inside that system, I can bring a lot of expertise to get things done. I love collaboration. Council is a group work, I'm not bringing a personal agenda to this. I'm looking for bringing my negotiating skills, bringing my collaborating skills, my listening skills to bear and to serve the city that's been, where I've raised my children. I've lived in various parts of Ward 1. And I feel like there's, it was mentioned that it's, it is an area of huge growth and change in Missoula. So, but it's also an area where we see a lot of our open space and, protecting our open space, protecting our environment, climate issues, that's also of crucial importance right now. So I would say of those two issues. And also, it's also been mentioned, just transparency and fiscal responsibility. I know that's a lot to weigh. I know it's a crucial time of change, but I'm ready to tackle it. I'm a doer. I get things done. I don't believe in just talking and rhetoric. And I think the city's doing many things amazingly well, but I also agree that there is room for improvement and committed citizens who can have experience. I do have a certificate in the MPA program here at UM from 2019.
15 seconds.
Thank you. I have a sociology and anthropology degree, and I just really care and have a passion for making Missoula an even better place than it already is and being inclusionary in that process. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, and it was Carmen, is that right?
Yep.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Carmen Corona. I am a middle school teacher here in Missoula. I've lived in Missoula nearly 30 years and about a third of that time as a Ward 1 resident, currently a Ward 1 resident, and I'm honored to be here on behalf of Sheena Winterer. I've known Sheena and her husband Drew for about 20 years. We've raised our children closely together. We share a strong love for Montana and a deep, deep respect for our incredible Missoula community. I'm also lucky enough to know Sheena on a professional level. I've worked with her purchasing a number of rentals over the years. And like I said before, I'm a teacher, so those purchases were maybe a bit challenging for Sheena at times. but she is the ultimate consummate professional. Working with Sheena is an incredible delight. She is diligent, she's trustworthy, she's honest. And I know that these are qualities that she brings to every aspect of her life. And I feel absolutely certain that she would be an asset to the Missoula community as a city council member. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your input this evening, Carmen. Okay, let's move on to Ward 2 now. Jordan Hess is the candidate seeking the committee endorsement for Ward 2.
Thank you, Nick. And I do not have anyone to speak on my behalf. Well, thank you, Nick and Shibu and everyone for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. It's been an honor to serve on the Missoula City Council for the past 8 years and to receive your endorsement for my past 2 elections. And I would be very grateful for your continued support and endorsement moving forward. I came to Missoula to attend the University of Montana in 2005, and I fell in love with our beautiful, vibrant community. And like so many others in the same boat, I decided to stay here and to make a life here. And I've been really fortunate to serve on the Missoula City Council for the past 8 years. And that has just continued to stoke and fuel my interest in public service. And I love Missoula. I love what Missoula has given me in my life, and I want to be able to give back some portion of that to the community. And that's in essence why I'm running for a 3rd term. In my 2 terms on the council, I have not backed down from some really major challenges. I have a strong interest in transportation. And I've worked on a number of transportation policies. I drafted and passed the city's Complete Streets Ordinance update a few years ago, which was rated best complete streets policy in the nation by Smart Growth America. And I've used my background in transportation to help build a coalition of support as we applied for and received a $13 million federal infrastructure grant that will build roads and water mains and sewer lines to accommodate new housing on the western part of Ward 2. I was unwavering in my support and my counsel during the multi-year legal fight that resulted in the purchase of the mountain water system from a hostile multinational hedge fund, securing public ownership of our water supply for future generations. And I enthusiastically supported the creation of the state's first affordable housing trust fund and the state's first municipal housing office, as the mayor spoke about earlier. These actions all required decisive leadership and consistent application of the city's strategic goals. And I believe that I played a strong role in all of those. We have done a lot of great stuff over the last 8 years and beyond, but there is so much more work to be done. And I believe that local government can be a transformative force for good in people's lives. Together, we can take on issues that are bigger than any of us individually. We are so much more than the sum of our parts. In the coming years, we will face interrelated.
15 seconds.
Thank you. We will face interrelated crises of climate and equity and housing, and these demand action at all levels of government. And I pledge to be a leader on these issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Okay, we will move on now to Ward 3. 2 candidates in Ward 3 are seeking endorsement. We will begin this round with Daniel Carlino. Daniel, take it away.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, my name is Daniel Carlino. I'm running for city council because I know that we need urgent action to stop this housing crisis in Missoula and to do everything we can to stop the climate crisis and make sure Montana does not invest further into fossil fuel energy and infrastructure. I studied environmental studies and wildlife biology at the university here, and that's what got me into action as a climate activist and environmental activist in our community. I started a climate action student group at the university and another one in town that's also social justice. advocacy group. And through my time as an activist, I've realized that our politics are often not matching what everyday working people and everyday Missoulians are asking for. Last year, there was a huge movement for social justice and for the Black Lives Matter movement in Missoula. And we saw protests at the courthouse and around town every single day for months, asking for change, asking for our government to step up and do what our BIPOC community and people who are experiencing homelessness in our community are asking for, to really create a truly safe community. And we didn't see all of what they were asking for happen. We were asking for jail diversion programs, major investments in housing, fully funding things like the mobile health crisis response team, and so on and so forth. Right now, our city is covered in smoke, and we can expect this to happen year after year, worse and worse, if we don't take drastic action to stop the climate crisis. On Missoula City Council, I plan to do everything that it takes to address our climate crisis, our criminal justice crisis, and reforming that, and everything that it takes to ensure everybody has access to affordable, secure housing in Missoula. I believe that housing is a human right, and I believe that our policies need to start matching up to that statement. I believe that all basic needs for people like housing, water, food, shelter, utilities, for example, breathable air and clean water should be guaranteed as human rights in this country. So I'm fighting to make sure that all Missoulians have their basic needs met, and to ensure that we do right by our neighbors who are homeless in our community, and do right by our future generations by truly stopping the climate crisis before we hit these major climate tipping points. If you believe those things are
15 seconds.
Thanks. Yeah, if you believe those things are human rights, and you believe that we need to do more and take on these issues urgently, I strongly encourage you to support my candidacy for city council. And please look at the specific policies I'm putting forward on the campaign website, danielcarlino.com. And I'll be happy to get to more of the specifics later on in this forum. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Thanks for being with us. We'll be seeing more of you. Okay, moving on. We, again, with Ward 3 candidate, Dory Galels. Dory, are you ready to roll?
I am. Can you all hear me?
Hi.
Yeah, okay, great.
Are you going to have someone speak on your behalf?
Commissioner Josh Slotnick was going to be here to speak on my behalf, but I don't see him here right now, so I guess not.
Okay, if he chimes in prior to that, we'll give you the heads up at 2 minutes, okay? Otherwise, it'll be
okay. That sounds great, and I'll probably keep it to around 2 minutes anyway. So thank you, Nick. Thank you, Shibu and Luann and others who put this event together. I appreciate the opportunity to participate and to be considered for your endorsement and to share some of my views and values with the larger community. So my name is Dory Galels. I'm a candidate for City Council Ward 3. When I arrived in Missoula in the early 90s, it was really love at first sight. And since then, I've never really thought about being anywhere else. Over the last 28 years, I've had the privilege of studying, raising a family, and working in leadership positions for a number of local organizations in this community. I was the executive director of the nonprofit Women's Voices for the Earth for a number of years. I co-owned Momload magazine for over a decade, and I have years of service on boards and advisory committees, the Montana Academy of Distinguished Entrepreneurs, the UM School of Journalism, Friends of Missoula Parks, Mountain Home, and many others. I believe this is a great place to live because we have a highly engaged citizenry and because many great Missoulians have given service to this community before me. And it's really an honor to know some of them and be supported by them. And I see this as my opportunity to do the same. I started thinking seriously about running for city council a couple of years ago, and I've taken deliberate steps to further my understanding of the work and responsibilities of our local government. I joined the University District Neighborhood Council leadership team in 2019, where I currently serve as co-chair. And I participated in both the local government Citizens Academy and the Citizens Law Enforcement Academy a couple years ago. For me, there's no question that local government is where my head and heart align. And I was inspired to run because I really want to protect the quality of life that I think makes Missoula so special. And so for me, I'm campaigning on livability, and really that entails attention to a lot of different things that make a community livable, including affordability, a healthy built and natural environment, the culture, economic prosperity, equity, health, and safety. And I've been committed to all of these things, and I'm passionate about all of these things because trade-offs are present in everything we do, and we really need to strive for the greatest balance of all of these things that make our community livable. The more I learn, the more humbled I am by the work of our city council. I think we are living in complex times, but I'm really enjoying the journey, and I'm eager to be of service. And I think that our investment in local leadership is more important than ever. And I really believe it's where I can make a difference. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dory. Okay, moving on. Mike Nugent, you now have 3 minutes to state your case for endorsement in the race in Ward 4. Mike, you ready to roll?
I am, and I'm going to have Tyler Gernot speak on my behalf at the end. My name is...
That warning at 2 minutes then.
Perfect. My name is Mike Nugent, and I'm running for City Council in Ward 4. I think many of the candidates have spoken eloquently, and I won't necessarily repeat every point they made, but we're obviously Democrats, and we agree on a lot of things. But Missoula's at a crisis point in our housing right now, and it's something that I think that I've got a unique kind of background to face. I have been in the housing world on the private side for the last 12 years. I also am a commissioner on the Missoula Housing Authority board. So I've got a unique ability to kind of see both sides of that conversation and kind of appreciate some of the things that are going into our current issues right now. I firmly believe that everybody deserves a safe and clean place to live. And I think that that is that should be a goal of any government. And I believe that government exists to do good things for people, and that we've got a responsibility to help each other out. Other areas that I think we need to hit on, obviously infrastructure is always a thing in city council races, and it will never not be. I think that's important to the people in their wards, how their sidewalks are, how their roads are, what happens to the snow, what happens to the leaves, those things matter. I think we have a unique opportunity to dive into some public-private partnerships, both with our nonprofit sector partners and our market rate housing partners to kind of tackle some of these issues. And I think that we can better use some of our TIF money to do this. I think that a perfect example of where we had the right idea, but maybe we could do better next time, is the Scott Street Village, which is at the end of Scott Street by the cemetery. We used TIF money to put in infrastructure.
15 seconds, sorry.
We used TIF money to put in infrastructure, but we didn't find a way to guarantee future affordability. So I think that we've got to be creative and find ways to do that. And I'm going to cut myself off there.
Okay, and we have Tyler speaking on your behalf.
So I will say I first met Mike about a decade ago at a John Tester fundraiser. And I was literally standing there talking to Senator Tester, and someone walked in behind me, and Tester bolted as quick as he could to leave me and go to whoever was behind me. And it turns out it was Mike. And I thought, boy, that must be somebody who's really important. And it turns out I was right. Mike, to know Mike is to like Mike. He's someone with very deep roots in Missoula. His grandfather served on city council. His dad has been the city attorney, I think, since laws were written. I'm not sure about that, but for seemingly forever. And Mike's just an all-around good guy who I know shares our values as Democrats. And I know that he's somebody who will fight for the things that we care about on city council. And so I hope that, aside from the fact that he's also, his opponent is Alan All, to to put it mildly, does not share our values. I think Mike would be a fantastic addition to the city council, and I hope you'll support him.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. And thank you, Mike. And before we move on, I'd like to put it on the record that I admire your haircut, sir. Okay, Stacy Anderson is seeking the endorsement of the committee for Ward 5. Stacy is unable to attend tonight. She's doing business in her current capacity as a council member. So, and it was a commitment that she couldn't get out of once this forum was delayed by a week. So she did complete the questionnaire. Anybody who wants to find out more about Stacy, go ahead and look at that questionnaire again. Okay, so moving on then, our final city council candidate seeking endorsement, Kristen Jordan in Ward 6. Kristen, you ready to roll?
Oh. Yeah, thank you, Nick, I am.
Very good. Are you going to have anyone speak on your behalf?
I do not have anyone speaking on my behalf. Thank you.
Okay, 3 minutes. You got it.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you to Nick and Shibu and Luann and the Missoula Democrats for putting together this forum and giving us a chance to get our strengths and wishes out to the general community. I do hope I can earn the endorsement of the Missoula Democrats folks. I'm missing a word there at the end of all this. I'm running because I love Missoula. I did move here recently, sight unseen. I had a list of things that I wanted in a community, and Missoula ticked all the boxes. And some of those things are things that we've talked about already tonight that include just a really caring community. I was really blown away by Soft Landing and Animals, that there are organizations that existed like that in this community. I wanted to live in a university town because they're pretty dynamic. I wanted to live in a beautiful place, and Missoula definitely is beautiful. I wanted to live in an area where citizens were really passionate about their home, and Missoula is that way. I feel like there are a lot of services available to Missoulians that somebody created because there was a need, and I love that about Missoula, and I'm really glad to be here. I'm running for council because I want to be a strong voice for Ward 6. So Ward 6 is largely Franklin to the fort, and then kind of some bulging boundaries from there. Because we have a character and we have values in Ward 6 that I'd like to make sure that I can continue to embrace and help Ward 6 constituents embrace while we look at big changes. We're looking at a lot of duplexes and infill in Ward 6, and it's great for affordable housing, but it also comes with some constituents who have some questions. I want to be a really accessible candidate that will encourage citizens to come and speak to their representatives about what's going on in their neighborhood. I have my background. I've always been a public servant. I don't think I've ever not worked for the government because I believe in public service. My heart lives in public service. I've always wanted to be on city council because of the proximity of government to constituents. You know, people can come knock on my front door. I can go knock on my city council member's front door and have a chat about things that I'm concerned about or things that I think are going really well. When I was doing my master's in public administration degree, we had a professor who said that cities and counties are the laboratories of democracy. And I believe that they're a place where we can experiment and really see how things are working and shift those things to really suit the needs of our community. And I really want to be a part of that. I have a background in science. I did genomics and published a few papers with some colleagues. So a strong research background.
15 seconds.
Oh my goodness, that went quick. So what I'm really interested in is bringing data-driven decision-making to city council decisions. I'm really interested in finding unity. It's so divisive, and I'm sure that when we sit down and talk to folks for a while, we can find some common ground. And I have a track record. I was a key player in getting Mobile Crisis up and running. I created the first criminal justice coordinating council here in Missoula, which is a body of decision makers looking at criminal justice reforms. And I was lucky enough to participate on a grant for missing and murdered Indigenous women. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. We will now move to the question part of the forum. Again, these questions, the order of candidates to answer have been randomized. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to answer the question. Shibu will give you a 15-second heads up when your time is almost up. And yeah, let's go ahead and start with the first candidate for the first question, Daniel Carlino. I'll give you a sec to get unmuted and get ready to rock and roll.
I'm all ready.
Very good, very good. Okay, this first question, again, will be answered by all candidates in attendance. It's a general one, but sort of deliberately so. So the first question, what factors do you consider when deciding how to vote on a particular decision?
Yeah, and how much time do we have, Nick? Oh, thanks. Well, first, I think we need to make sure that we're following what our community wants. And before voting on things, I'd like to always have feedback and dialogue with people in our community, and especially those that would live in the neighborhood or would be most affected by the voting decision that would be made. With every decision, I'm going to be working to make sure that we're promoting social justice and equity in our community, along with making sure that we are making these decisions in an environmentally sound and way, and that follow climate and social justice with every decision. So I'd like to increase the dialogue between constituents and our city council members. For example, by whenever people go up to public comment, there needs to be a system where people can write down their contact info and and then one of their city council representatives would get back to them every single time. That seems like a simple solution, and also creating more citizen oversight committees and giving more power to those committees to make the final decisions on things, to try and diversify the political power. But yeah, that pretty much answers it. And I just really think that the dialogue between city council members and our community members could be much better. And I believe in a budget, and I believe in voting on things that reflect what our community is asking for, especially those that are marginalized and most vulnerable in our community. So I'll be putting that at the forefront of every decision that city council makes.
Thank you, Daniel. The next candidate, we are going to keep the, in wards where there's multiple candidates, we're going to keep them together so it's easier to differentiate them. So Dory Gilels, you are next, and I will give you a chance to unmute and get on the spotlight.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, what factors do you consider when deciding how to vote on a particular issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, I think it's important to be well informed about the issue on the table. I think that includes looking at data and facts and figures. I think it includes consultation with city staff. I think it includes an examination of current city policies. I'm not afraid to ask good questions. I don't think any question is a dumb question. I'm an independent thinker, and I certainly think the views of my constituents are really important. And that's why during this campaign, I'm spending a considerable amount of time knocking doors and really collecting input from constituents in Ward 3 so that I can go into this service with real on the ground knowledge of what people are concerned about and what they care about.
Excellent. Thank you much, Dory. The next candidate to be heard from Ward 4, Mike Nugent. And again, you can unmute, get ready. And what factors do you consider, Mike, when deciding on how to vote on a particular issue?
I think that whenever possible, obviously, we want to vote the way that our ward would like us to vote. Obviously, the way representative government works is they elect people to help make decisions for them. But I think one of the things that your survey touched on was, how can we better communicate with our ward and keep that communication going? And frankly, I think that that's something that we can all do better as far as what comes in front of city council, because most of the things people complain about as far as city council goes, city council doesn't actually have anything to do with, which is kind of probably true for a lot of local government. So I think that kind of keeping my door open, keeping my inbox open, and making sure that we're factoring in both what our constituents want and what's for the better good of the community, and factoring in all those things is important.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Next up, Ward 6 candidate, Kristen Jordan. Kristen Jordan, what factors do you consider when deciding how to vote on a particular issue?
Well, I believe that government should be a social safety net. And so I like to vote for issues that actually show that they're going to help and assist people who are marginalized. So ensuring that rules, regulations, and policies don't negatively affect people who already don't have a solid foundation. I also really want to find out what my constituents think. I think that Ward 6 is a pretty split ward, and I represent everyone. And it's going to be really important to make sure I hear from my constituents on these issues, because it's not just me on city council. It's me, it's my constituents, and it's the other 11 folks and the mayor making decisions about how to make sure Missoula has a social safety net for its citizens. I also love data. I'm a data junkie. One of the things I really would love to start focusing on is data-driven decision-making, making sure that we're looking at data. If we don't have the data, why don't we have it? Let's make sure that we put in good metrics and use them to evaluate program efficiencies, and also ensure that data is never used to throw anybody under the bus, only to make things, programs, and people better. So those are three of the things that I'm really interested in making a decision.
There we go. All right, thank you very much. Okay, from Ward 1 now, we are going to hear Jennifer Savage. Jennifer, if you want to get ready to rock. What factors, Jennifer, do you consider when deciding how to vote on a particular issue?
I think some of these have been mentioned, but I will mention them again. I think listening to the voices in our community is super important. I think it's also important to do research and read data, talk to city employees, also do our own sort of independent research. I also think transparency is something that I'm super interested in. And so in making decisions, I would be interested in looking at things through a transparency lens. I would also be interested in looking at things through a social justice lens, an equity lens, an environmental lens. How do these things play into the particular proposal that's in front of us? I'd also be interested in elevating the voices of those who have traditionally had less access to power, and how can we do that in terms of making this particular decision? And I think that another piece would be, how can this particular decision or proposal or whatever leverage the next one? And what does this look like in the big picture? These different decisions are not made in terms of being isolated. And so what does it look like? What would this particular thing look like in terms of a larger picture, a larger plan, a vision that's sort of greater than one specific thing?
Okay. Thank you much, Jennifer. That same question now, the other Ward 1 candidate that is with us tonight, Jane Van Fossen. Jane, what factors do you consider when deciding on how to vote on a particular issue? Jane, do we have you?
My apologies.
Oh, no worries.
One of the things in observing city council operations closely for some time, actually nearly 20 years off and on, but intensively in recent years, the city council votes on probably an average of 10 items every meeting. That's every Monday night. They can have votes as many as 16 in one night. Most of these have been covered in prior Wednesday in committee meetings, and sometimes very superficially. I've been very surprised, given my background, at the lack of questioning on the part of the council. And sometimes I think that the duty to due diligence is done very superficially. And there is a fiduciary responsibility when you're an elected official. One of the things in terms of forming a decision, I not only want to hear the pros, because staff almost always presents a very rosy picture when they're proposing something that they want to see happen, but I also think an honest presentation will present the cons to the council. I strongly believe in measures of effectiveness. If we set goals, we should have milestones and we should have measurements. And I also think we should have follow through as a council. Just because we voted for something in September doesn't mean that we ignore it for a year, that we should ask for periodic reports. That is our right under Montana law. And also the interconnectivity among decisions. When you tweak
15 seconds.
When you tweak one corner of a complex system, you're likely to have some unintended consequences. So I would like to see that thought through more deliberatively at times.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Next up from Ward 1, Sheena Winterer. Sheena, what factors do you when deciding how to vote on a particular issue?
What I've been hearing from talking to people in this campaign most is they're looking for common sense decision-making and representation. So listening to those constituents is bringing that to the table, and thinking about what's best for all of Missoula and what's best long-term for Missoula, and not being reactionary necessarily, and not so you can understand what maybe unforeseen consequences could be to a decision, looking at the big picture, measuring the different points of view. As a professional negotiator, I believe in win-win options, and compromise and collaboration. So when I make decisions, and that would continue on council, those are the things I would bring to the table to make good decisions for Missoula.
Very good, thank you, Sheena. And finally, last contendant for the first question, Ward 2, Jordan Hess. Jordan, what factors do you consider when deciding on how to vote on a particular issue?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And there's been a lot of good answers and a lot of diversity. And I think that diversity of thought process and decision-making process is important on this body. I've come to appreciate over the years just the different things that different colleagues bring in terms of perspective and background. For me, the guiding North Star typically is the city's adopted plans and policies. We have strategic plans and we have strategic documents. The city has an overarching strategic plan. We have a growth policy, and then we have a variety of policies that are ranging from soup to nuts, from large scale policies, a parks development master plan on down to stormwater facilities master plan. And so using those policies and plans that are adopted through a deliberative, extensive process with extensive public involvement as our framework and as our guiding star helps keep the train on the tracks and keeps us going in the right direction. All that said, I mean, a lot of other candidates have touched on things that are extremely important. Data-driven decisions, having metrics to inform our decision-making process. In the case of land use and other ordinance adoption, sometimes it's what ability has the state legislature given us as a local government. Oftentimes we find that we may want to do something as a local government, and the state legislature has, particularly in light of this most recent session, has tied our hands and said that, and has taken away powers from municipalities. And lastly, it's
15 seconds.
Thanks. Lastly, it's measuring things through our values, and we have some common community values, and I believe particularly in looking at things through the lens of equity, through the lens of housing, and through the lens of climate.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, let's move on to the second question now. As it so happens, Jordan, you are going to be leading off, so we don't have to grab anybody new. Some years ago, the Central Committee and others called upon city law enforcement to do a better job in responding to sexual assaults. Are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? And if not, what further steps do you suggest be taken?
Thanks. Well, I think that there was some important work that was done at the city of Missoula, in Missoula County, and at the University of Montana, and that came out of a shameful place of having done a very poor job of responding to sexual assault. So I think that through working collaboratively, those jurisdictions have begun working, or have done a really good job of improving response to sexual assault. So I think that there are important pieces of training, important pieces around making sure that our law enforcement are well trained, that our city attorney's office is well trained, and have the resources that they need to respond and prosecute sexual assault and sexual violence, also working with our victim support services through the Relationship Violence Services. That's a joint city-county venture. I've been extremely pleased and impressed with the work that RVS has done to support victims, and I think that work needs to continue and needs to be expanded upon. I think that despite these improvements over the last number of years, there remains much work to be done, particularly the intersection of sexual assault and sexual violence and our Indigenous populations. And I think a lot of the mayor's responses earlier to the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women apply in this situation as well. It's a holistic approach, and we need to continue to elevate the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Next up will be Sheena Winter from Ward 1. Sheena, regarding city law enforcement of sexual assault allegations, are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? If not, what further steps do you suggest be taken?
Well, I mean, this is near and dear to my heart. I'm a mother of 4, and 2 are going off to college. And I am so proud of my police officer friends and the work that they have done since a lot of this came to the fore. And I think that there has been a lot of great training. There continues to be. The last year, we've talked more about de-escalation and other things in law enforcement. But this is something that we can work on all of the time. I'm passionate about this issue. When I was younger, I was part of a sexual assault counseling hotline. And I think you can always do more work in this area, but I am proud that our city's worked hard to improve, to protect, all of our college, all of our citizens, all of our wonderful community here. And then I'm glad that sex trafficking issue was brought up. I'm shocked when I hear from law enforcement friends of what the truth is and what's happening. And I'm not an expert in this field, but I can't wait to help to be effective in any way I can and support law enforcement to protect, to prevent these things from happening, but to protect victims when things do happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sheena. Next up, again from Ward 1, Jane Van Fossen. Jane, regarding city law enforcement of sexual assault allegations, are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? If not, what further steps do you suggest being taken?
unfortunately, this is a problem that occurs around the world, in some societies far worse than in our little valley. But one incident is too many incidents. I have been in the past counseled young women who have been victims and have dealt with law enforcement. I've been very, very pleased to see the steps being taken by our police force. I particularly admired the chief who has taken over, and I think he's doing a very good job in terms of keeping the public informed. I was very pleased to see the annual report for the first time ever that was published in Missoula this past year. It was very informative. I appreciate the efforts of the county attorney to inform the public about criminal offenses, and some of which do involve sexual assault, and some of which are partner assaults as well, partner abuse. Do I think there's room for improvement? Always, always. Wherever there's a disparity in power, there will be offenses. And I think it's a fundamental job of government is to balance that power, to give voice to the voiceless, and to bring justice to those who suffered injustice.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Third candidate now from Ward 1, Jennifer Savage. Jennifer, regarding city law enforcement of sexual assault allegations, are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? If not, what further steps do you suggest?
I was working at the University of Montana when the sexual assault sort of big stories broke. I think it was my first day of work, and they were sentencing one of the young men who was on trial at the time. And in that time, having worked at the university through those years where it was particularly challenging and difficult, I think the university learned a lot of lessons. They learned a lot of lessons about how they dropped the ball in so many ways, how also they sort of, putting on my professional hat here, did not clearly communicate or embrace transparency during that time. I also think because so many, or because our police officers were also under scrutiny during that time, they probably also learned a lot of things as well. And I think, are there things to improve upon? Always. When it comes to the cultural moment that Me Too brought about, I think that there's so much more heightened awareness about this issue, and I'm grateful that it's there. That I think it opened up space for lots of different organizations, including probably the police department, to be able to make some improvements, improve victim services. But the dedication of the people who were working on those cases was clear, and it was clear all along. And so, when I hear that, say, Guy Baker, for example, is working on trafficking, that gives me a lot of hope, actually, for that particular issue. And, I've spent my career working at nonprofits in places like Blue Mountain Clinic. I've written grants for the YWCA. And when I think about how we can sort of move forward and improve, I think empowering those kinds of organizations, supporting those kinds of organizations in the critical work that they do with victims would be one thing that I would suggest. And I also agree with Jordan that there is a real link with the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And that also needs to be highlighted as well.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Moving on to Ward 3 now, Dory Glells will be the first to answer this question number 2 regarding city law enforcement of allegations of sexual assault. Dory, are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? And if not, what steps would you suggest?
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. I'll start by saying that In 2015, when John Krakauer published the book Missoula, I wrote an opinion piece about this. And I was incredibly disappointed in the reaction of Missoula to want that book to go away, because I felt like it was precisely what we needed to start talking about these issues. You know, I don't think, you know, I do think that this is an issue that's bigger than police. It's a societal issue. You know, I don't think it's ever going to be done or over or good enough in terms of, you know, how we treat this issue. You know, until we live in a society where girls, women, and other vulnerable members can dress, drink, be merry without being becoming victims, I think we have work to do. You know, I will say, as I mentioned earlier, I participated in the police academy. I learned about a number of folks in that department working passionately and diligently on these issues. So I'm certainly encouraged by the progress and the dedication. I also am aware that the police department is participating in a new pilot program with the Department of Justice and the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribe to develop a better system of coordinating and communicating about missing and murdered Indigenous women and developing protocols for those cases, which I think is a wonderful development. So I think we are certainly, you know, we have taken this out from under the rug, and I think that's incredibly important. And I think, you know, we definitely need to continue to keep it front and center and continue to do the work. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dory. Daniel Carlino, you're next now regarding city law enforcement of sexual assault allegations. Are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? And if not, what steps would you suggest?
Thanks. No, I think there's a lot more that we could do to address these issues in our community. Domestic violence is the #1 cause of homelessness for women in our country. And we need to have resources and proper funding to ensure that that we can reduce the harm and, you know, make sure that all survivors have access to the resources that they need to get out of their situation with housing. I believe in fully funding transitional housing for sexual assault survivors, like the new YWCA shelter. And when it comes to our TIF funds, I know that new YWCA shelter that has a domestic violence unit there only got about $100,000 or so in TIF funds. And I'd like to make sure that well, you know, things like the Marriott hotels renovations got close to $2 million. And I'd like to make sure that when we're talking about TIF and where that these nonprofit companies and groups that are trying to open up buildings or shelters for survivors of sexual assault or domestic violence know that the city will help fund those through renovations of TIF or through our general budget with the resources and creating new crisis response teams that are experts and have quality training in domestic violence and sexual assault. With resources like that, then we can take on this issue with more urgency and with the proper funding that we need. So I'm not satisfied. I'd like to see a lot more funding and support go towards these issues, especially with making sure that people are able to have housing that can get away from
15 seconds
or sexual assault. And I'd like to keep bringing more awareness on this issue and listen to our community for the proper solutions and resources. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, moving to Ward 6, Kristen Jordan. Kristen, regarding city law enforcement of sexual assault allegations, are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? And if not, what further steps would you suggest?
Well, you know, I was just thinking about what Jordan said, and, you know, the fact that it took a Department of Justice investigation to get us to really start addressing sexual assault kind of more in line with best practices is an unfortunate necessity. It was a horrible time, and it was also something that had to be done. I do think there's still a lot more work to be done. For instance, I'd really like to see all of our law enforcement have crisis intervention training. when they have crisis intervention training, they at least get a bit of a skill set that allows them to park away some of their biases and really be good listeners and good fact takers. Something else I'd really like to see, and this is my data chestnut, is we need to have more data tracking in this space. What happens to all the reports that are made? What happens to all the arrests that are made? How do they come out in a disposition? Is the person found guilty of the crime? Was there a plea deal? Were the charges changed according to what was a more winnable case? I would really love to start tracking data from arrests to dispositions to find out what's going on in the space. Getting law enforcement data has been really hard because it's protected. And it would be nice to find some ways through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to start getting more data from these types of crimes to see how we're doing. Because I actually don't know how we're doing as far as sexual assault goes and domestic violence. I know that during COVID, domestic violence has increased, but I don't know how we're tracking it locally. And I'd love to see some data on that. I also think it's really, I can't think of another word, but shameful that we still have staff members at victim services who still have to write grants to have their salaries paid for. They need to be hard funded by the city and the county. They never should have to beg for money and worry about where their salary is going to come from again. I think that that is where we're really falling short, is that we still don't have solid services in place for domestic violence frontline staff. And I don't understand that. And that is definitely something I want to address and find out why they're not all hard funded. I also am interested in finding out why Native American women don't come to RVS as much as they go to the YWCA. I'd like to understand a little bit about the disparity.
15 seconds.
Oh, thank you. And finally, I'd also like to find out how we can get the mobile crisis team more involved in doing follow-up with victims and making sure that they're getting the services they need to get through a really horrific incident.
Excellent. Thank you, Kristen. The last candidate for this question, Ward 4's Mike Nugent. Mike, regarding city law enforcement of sexual assault allegations, are you satisfied with the improvements that have been made? If not, what steps would you suggest?
Yeah, I don't think satisfied is ever a word that we can really use around this topic. I mean, I think that, you know, after some serious prompting, it is good that this issue has been faced more head on than it was previously, but we can always do better. And that's true locally, and that's true across the country, both in the community, on campus, kind of everywhere. I think one of the big things that kind of gets lost in this is not only in the moment, like we need well-trained police officers and prosecutorial staff to kind of handle these issues, but we also need that next step, that follow-up. And Kristen kind of hit this right on the head with, you know, we've got crime victim advocates, but we need to make sure that there are people who are well-funded and exist to kind of help people get through this process and do follow-ups and make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks, because these sort of events can be a crisis point in someone's life where if they don't get the help they need, it can be a trigger to all sorts of other issues. And I think that a couple of our candidates kind of have already answered this, talking about partner and family member assaults and how a lot of these things kind of tie together. But I think that one of the big things that rings true is safe housing can be a big positive step to tackle some of these issues before they happen. It's not going to solve all of them by any stretch, but that's definitely something where we can be more proactive and help people out. I think that supporting all the great things this community has to offer, including the YWCA shelter, the new one going in on 3rd, which I've had the opportunity to tour. It really is a tremendous step up from where this community was prior. I think that's all real positive, but I think that Kristen's answer about data and knowing and actually getting a better feel for what we really know versus what we think we know, I think it's crucial. And I will be right there with her on that front. She seems a little bit more data smart than I am, so she may be the leader, but I will be right there with her.
Very good. Thanks, Mike. Okay, moving on to the third and final regular question prior to the lightning round. And that question will be posed of Mike. You are going to stay on the clock. That question is, if you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
If I could pass the city ordinance, I would say that whenever we give public money to housing projects, be it through TIF or other means, that we better tie in a return on a community need to that project. I think that's one of many, but I think that we've got the opportunity to use TIF a little bit more wisely when it comes to helping to solve our housing crisis. Jordan mentioned that the state legislature kind of tied our hands on some policies, but I don't think all is lost. And I think that we've got tremendous opportunity to kind of use that as a carrot to kind of build what we want to see that follows our growth plan and achieves the growth and the steps that we've said that we want to do as a community, and we've kind of outlined in that plan. And I think maybe the first real step, if that's not a policy that could pass right away, would be we need to update our zoning to kind of allow that more to happen.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Next up for this question, Kristen Jordan. Kristen, if you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
Are there any budgetary or logistical holds bars on this?
This is your imagination. There is no secret.
I want to see a living wage. I think having a living wage would solve so many problems, and a living wage that's not $15 an hour. I think a living wage, honestly, is probably more like $20 to $25 an hour, so that people like myself who are a single mom don't have to work twice as hard to maintain a household. And I'm just part of a whole group of people who can barely afford to live in Missoula. And with those jobs comes just solid healthcare, so that people don't ever have to worry about medical bankruptcy and they can pay their bills. I think that when people have enough money to address and look after their basic needs, a lot of other things fall into place. And so living wage.
Very good, thank you. Okay, moving to Ward 3, Dory Galels. If you could pass any ordinance or change any policy in the city, what would it be and why?
That's a great question. I'll start by saying that there are a variety of things I'd be interested in doing, but the state legislature has really tied the hands of local government this last session, and there are a variety of things I think Missoula and the citizenry would be supportive of that we're not going to be able to do, at least in the short term. And I'll just mention a couple of those and then mention another, which is, things like banning single-use plastic. I know there's tons of community support for something like that, but the legislature has precluded our ability to do something like that. On the doors, I hear a lot of people talk about, their concern about increasing property taxes, and we have an outdated, regressive tax policy at the state level. There are things we could do locally to address it with looking at new sources of tax revenue, but the state legislature, again, has precluded our ability to do that, even went so far as to repeal the local option gas tax that was passed by voters. The other thing I would say is with regard to climate change, I'm really excited about looking at ways we can incentivize developers around our climate policy and building with climate sensitivity, both new and retrofitted construction. And I think there's a lot of room there to look at incentives for doing so, perhaps through local policies and ordinances. And I have, a lot more things, but I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Dory. Daniel Carlino, Ward 3. Daniel, if you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
Well, my main priorities is to try and keep Missoula affordable for all of us, working to stop the climate crisis, and working to reform our criminal justice system. But if I could only pass one, with the climate crisis front and center, of smoke filling our lungs, the lungs of people we love, and we can taste it if you're outside. It's very bad, and I'd hate to see future generations to bear the worst burden of this. So if I could pass one city ordinance, we need to change our energy efficiency policies to make sure that we are not allowing fracked gas heating on new building developments, Because if we're allowing gas heating going into the 2020s and 2030s, we're going to be reliant on fossil fuel heating way past when we hit these major climate tipping points. And along with that, we'd have to upgrade our energy efficiency standards on buildings as well. So I'm trying to take on the climate crisis, and we need bold action. And that means not building new fossil fuel infrastructure on buildings in Missoula during the time of a climate crisis. So electrifying all future buildings and increasing the energy efficiency standards. Thanks.
Good, thank you, Daniel. Okay, we are moving to Ward 2, Jordan Hess. If you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
My apologies, I'm fumbling with mute here. It's a really good question, and it's a good thought exercise, and it's a thought exercise that we need to go through frequently. And I think that that part of that is that we need to, the city is an active lobbyist, is active with our legislative delegation and lobbies at the state level for changes at the state level. So I've got a laundry list of things that I would love to do if the state would enable it. I think we should expand access to childcare locally. I think we should pass enabling legislation locally to allow development of large-scale renewable energy projects. I think we should explore a universal basic income pilot and making that a long-term reality. I think we should explore protections for renters. The reality is that there's a needle to thread about what we're allowed to do within the state and what chartered local governments can do. So one thing that is a huge priority for me for the next term is a comprehensive rewrite of our zoning code and our development regulations. I think that this will allow us to better accomplish our land use goals around providing a diversity of housing types. I think it'll allow us to better accomplish our transportation goals of providing mixed use, walkable, livable neighborhoods. I think that it'll allow us to address a lot of our affordability challenges. And that's something that's in the budget for fiscal year 22 as proposed by the mayor. And I think I'm really excited to get working on that. I think could potentially be the most transformative, not a very sexy project, but perhaps the most transformative project.
15 seconds.
In the upcoming years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Moving to Ward 1 now. The first of the Ward 1 candidates for this question, Jane Van Fossen. Jane, if you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
Actually, I have two nominees. The first would be to take a hard look at how the water utility finances are being managed. When the city took over the water company actually it was June 22nd, 2017, 8 days later, the net position of the water company was negative $10 million. And that net position has worsened over the last 4 years. It's now negative $13 million. We are not balanced, and the financial position of the water company is degrading in terms of operating expenses. That needs to be looked at by the city council, and that is reflective of an approach that I really think would be beneficial for the council, which is to take a longer term view of some of the policies that are put into motion. We have got to address funding for the water utility in a more sustained way. My second nominee is the idea of tax increment financing and the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. Missoula has really jumped in the deep end of TIF usage. We've outstripped every other city in the state in terms of creating an entirely separate agency to manage our TIF monies. And as a consequence, currently 23 cents out of every dollar that is collected in general taxes goes to MRA. And that situation is going to increase as new development takes place. MRA
15 seconds.
gets more of the tax dollars. So those are two things that I think a long-term forecast of the financial situation would really be beneficial and would bring us into focus.
Very good. Thank you, Jane. Next up now, Ward 1, Jennifer Savage. Jennifer, if you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
I agree. The list is long of ideas because you're asking a magic wand question. And I think that for me, I spent the last 6 months in my day job researching, reading, doing a lot of deep diving on TIF. And if I could do one thing, I think it would be to do what other communities have done and get creative with the use of TIF and be able to fund some affordable housing. I think we've seen it in places like Austin, Portland, Chicago, Minneapolis. There are lots of good models out there. I realize TIF is a statute, and so there's some like legislative play there as well. But I think that it could go a long way in sort of the long-term funding of affordable housing. And then also on the list, of course, are livable wage. I also agree with Jordan about the updated zoning. And I would find some magical way to fund childcare. Women were disproportionately affected by this pandemic. Lots of women are out of work because they are home taking care of their children. And I don't know how that works, but if you're asking me a magic wand question, that's one I would throw on the list.
Thank you, Jennifer. And finally, on this final question, Sheena Winter, Ward 1. Sheena, if you could pass any ordinance or change any city policy, what would it be and why?
I think there've been some really great answers, and my brain went to, when can we do wind farms, solar farms, childcare, healthcare. I would love to see a single-use plastic ban, but I just came back to funding. I think that we are such an innovative and creative town in coming up with, great problem solving, but we lack funding. And so for me, it goes back to the state and the legislature, but I would love to see us push really hard on other revenue sources, other than property taxes, other than raising bond money. I feel like the more we can do with pushing on, things like sales tax, things like gas option tax, there's legal challenges, there's, marijuana tax, things that our constituents would get behind. But I think these are great ideas, but my ordinance would have to be something that we could get through the state that would be another revenue source. So I think the marijuana tax is realistic, but I think maybe working on legal challenges to the gas tax, local option gas tax, which are community supported, would be something that I would want for my ordinance, something that's going to fund all these amazing projects.
Okay, thank you much, Sheena. All right, folks, so we are going to move to the lightning round. Our original plan was to have the candidates in person hold up signs saying yes or no. We are going to try to request folks go to a grid view. If all the candidates can please unmute and clear their throat, do some scales, tell a joke, something, we should be able to get everybody up there. Okay. And because we don't, little concerned about holding signs and readability, I am just gonna rip through the list, and you guys can go ahead. If you don't have a lot of background noise, stay unmuted so you won't need to fumble with that stuff. Okay. Everybody good to go? Okay. Again, yes or no questions. We will, and I will probably just use a single list and repeat that list and not randomize it because of the yes or no. So do you support a woman's right to choose in matters of reproductive health? Jennifer Savage,
Let me see. Yes.
Jane Van Fossen,
Yes.
Sheena Winter,
Heck, yes. Absolutely.
Jordan Hess,
Absolutely, yes.
Daniel Carlino,
Yes, absolutely.
Dory Galels,
Yes, of course.
Mike Nugent,
Yep, absolutely.
Kristen Jordan.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, that was the softball of the group. So here we go. Number 2. Do we need more bike lanes in Missoula? Jennifer Savage. Jennifer, yeah, no? Yes. Oh, there's the yes. Jane Van Fossen.
Not too many.
Sheena Winter.
Yes, a few more.
Jordan Hess.
Yes. Biking should be safe and comfortable for all.
Daniel Carlino.
Yes, Missoula should be the city where you don't need a car.
Okay, let's try to state with the yes and no format. I appreciate your willingness and desire to share the thoughts, but we need to get these quickly. So, Dory Galels.
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Yep.
Kristen Jordan.
Yes.
All right. Next question. Do we need to make more construction for affordable housing in Missoula? More construction for affordable housing. Jennifer Savage.
Yes, but I would have a longer answer to that if you were allowing that sort of thing.
If only we were. Jane Van Fossen.
Absolutely.
Sheena Winter.
Yes.
Jordan Hess.
Yes.
Daniel Carlino.
Yes.
Dory Galels.
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Yep.
Kristen Jordan.
Yes.
Okay. The next one. Do you support the Green New Deal? Do you support the Green New Deal? Jennifer Savage.
Yes.
Jane Van Fossen.
No.
Sheena Winter.
Can you say partially? 80%?
It's a one word. I'm going to allow it. One word. You got it. Daniel Carlino.
Absolutely.
Dory Galels.
I'm going to say yes.
Mike Nugent.
Mostly yes.
Kristen Jordan.
Yes.
Okay. Next question. Should city workers be allowed to unionize? Should city workers allowed to be unionized? Jennifer Savage.
Why am I going first every time? Yes.
Jane Van Fossen.
They already are.
Sheena Winter.
Yes.
Jordan Hess.
Yes.
Daniel Carlino.
Yes.
Dory Galels.
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Absolutely.
Kristen Jordan.
Yes.
Okay, so I've been allowed a little bit of latitude to throw in a mid-round question. This question is a two-parter. It's extremely important. I want you to think about your answers. Not very long though. Is the Paddleheads a good and appropriate name change for Missoula's minor league baseball team? Is the Paddleheads a good name change? And Jennifer, duly noted, we're going to start with Kristen Jordan.
I don't normally care about these things, but my constituents don't like it.
Mike Nugent.
I mean, if they were going to change their name, sure, but I prefer Osprey.
Dory Galels.
Yeah, I guess I don't love it.
Daniel Carlino.
I'm gonna go with maybe.
Jordan Hess.
It's not an issue of city jurisdiction.
Winter.
No, because the Osprey was perfect with the Osprey mascot. And so absolutely not, but I guess they're doing pretty well. So whatever.
Jane Van Fossen.
Love the Osprey.
Jennifer Savage.
Also love the Osprey.
Okay, part two of that question is Bear Tracks Bridge a good and appropriate name change for the bridge over Missoula, over Higgins, over the Clark Fork on Higgins Avenue. Bear Tracks, good name change, yes or no? Jennifer Savage,
Maybe.
Jane Van
Naming takes me a minute.
Jane Van Fossen,
We can call it the bridge to nowhere as long as it's structurally sound.
Tina Winterer,
Not my favorite, so no, not a good name change.
Jordan Hess,
Yes, it honors an important Indigenous heritage and it has a rich backstory, and I think it was a good name change.
Daniel Carlino,
Yes, and we should change the street too.
Dory Glells,
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. I think the intention and the work behind it is critically important with our Native people.
Mike Nugent,
Yep, if we're gonna change the name, I think it's a good one.
and Kristen Jordan.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, moving on. Do you support the recently passed City Council resolution in support of transgender youth? Daniel Carlino,
Yes, of course.
Dory Glells,
Most definitely yes.
Mike Nugent,
Absolutely, 100%.
Kristen Jordan,
Absolutely.
Jennifer Savage. Yay. Sorry, I wasn't on that screen. You good? Did we get a yes?
Yes.
No, there, thank you. Jane Van Fossen,
Outside the city's jurisdiction, the state legislature. That's the law. We need to deal with them.
Sheena, did we get one from you?
Heck yes, I support it.
Jordan Hess.
Yes, proud co-sponsor.
Very good. Next question. Is Missoula gentrifying? Is the gentrification happening here? Jordan Hess, let's go you.
Yes, and I'll address that in my closing remarks.
Sheena Winterer,
Yes.
Jane Van Fossen,
Big time.
Jennifer Savage,
Yes.
Dory Glells,
Yes.
Daniel Carlino,
Yes.
Kristen Jordan,
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Yep.
Okay, another one of great import, social import. Should dogs be allowed on the patios of businesses in the city of Missoula? Should dogs be allowed? Mike Nugent,
As long as the business wants them, yep.
Kristen Jordan,
Yes.
Dory Glells,
Yes, I'm in favor of bringing dogs to work where it's acceptable by the business.
Daniel Carlino,
Yes.
Jordan Hess,
Yeah, I'd like to see that reformed.
Jane Van Fossen,
Yes.
Jennifer Savage,
Yes.
Sheena Winterer.
Proud dog owner, yes.
Very good. Okay, your final question, lightning round of the evening. This one seems like a simple one, but it has proven not to be. Did Joe Biden win the 2020 presidential election? Did he win the presidential election? Daniel Carlino,
Yes.
Dory Glells,
Yes, he did.
Kristen Jordan,
Absolutely. Yes.
Van Fossen, Sheena Winterer,
Without a doubt, yes.
Jennifer Savage,
Yes.
Mike Nugent.
Yep.
Okay, Jordan Hess.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Bingo. Okay, thank you guys for that lightning round. We are going now to move on to the closing remarks. Due to the time and the fact that we need to vote on some things after this, we are going to restrict the closing remarks to 1 minute. Realize that you guys have prepared those remarks. Apologize for any inconvenience, but 1 minute. Shibu will give you a heads up with 15 seconds remaining. This is done in opposite order of the intro. So Kristen Jordan, it is your mic.
Thank you. I appreciate the time that you guys have given me and all the rest of us to present our views and standpoints. I'm really interested in running for Ward 6 City Council because I want to bring data-driven decision-making into city council decisions more so than what's being used. I also want to look for unity. I'm finding when I talk to my neighbors long enough, we have things in common, and I think that's really important to have these conversations. And I also believe in ongoing engagement, just finding every way possible to make sure that the constituents can go back and forth. And if I earn the vote of my ward, I promise to bring all that to the table, plus what their interests are, with a focus on criminal justice reforms, affordable housing, and conservation issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Nugent. You are you have a 1 minute to close.
All right. Thanks everybody for taking the time to listen to all of us. I'm running for Ward 4 because I love Missoula. You know, your question mentioned gentrification, and I think that housing is our major issue right now, and so many of our other problems and issues stem from access to housing across all spectrums, and that housing affordability and fixing that process. I think that my values are Dem values, and Missoula's values are Dem values, and I'm proud of who I am and who we are, and I'm proud to be Missoulian, and I would love your endorsement.
Thank you, Mike. Dory Galels.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks to all of you again for having us here tonight. Experience and collegiality are two of my greatest assets. I have decades of relevant work history and life experience here in Missoula. I believe people are our greatest resource, and that Missoula is a wonderful place to live because we have a healthy civic culture. I'm super committed to building on that. Since the beginning of my campaign, I've walked over 100 miles of Ward 3, reaching thousands of voters through door knocking, and I've had over 100 meetings with a wide range of community leaders, because this isn't just about me. My responsibility as a public servant is to understand what Missoulians, and specifically my constituents, need and think, and use that as my filter for how I make decisions and serve. And I think the how we serve is super important. I'm a critical and independent thinker and entrepreneur, and I think our greatest challenges can be opportunities. We're living in dynamic times, and the work of city council is increasingly complex. And I think we need a local policy-making body capable of intelligent, thoughtful, and respectful decision-making, deliberations, and debates. And I would be honored to serve and have your support. Thanks.
Thank you, Dory. The other candidate from Ward 3, Daniel Carlino.
We all know Missoula is a really special place, you know, having the rivers and mountains surrounding us and the lively community. But Missoula is changing, and if you want to preserve the culture and character of Missoula, we need to make sure that it stays affordable for everyday working class Missoulians. You know, as the only renter in the race, I think that we really need representation for renters on the city council, or more representation on there. So I'm running to help bring urgent and bold solutions to our housing crisis and to our climate crisis before it's too late and we lose sight of the Missoula that we've all come to love. So I hope I can count on your vote in this endorsement process. And, you know, I've knocked every door in the district.
15 seconds.
And I'm gonna keep talking to Missoulians and doing the hard work to make sure that we do right to achieve social justice and climate and environmental justice in Missoula. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Jordan Hess, Ward 2.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick, and thanks everyone for your time tonight. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work you do. I'm a proud Democrat, and I'm really grateful for the work that the Central Committee does. It's really important, and it's often thankless. I hope that my record and our working relationship over the last 8 years speak for themselves, and I hope to receive your continued support tonight. I think there's a lot of good work that we can continue to do together, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to serve. I wanted to mention briefly the question of gentrification. I think there's a lot that we can do and a lot that we are doing. We can double down on our work on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We can continue to implement some of our adopted plans and policies to preserve the Missoula that we know and love, and also to create new opportunities for Missoulians. Thanks for your support. I appreciate you.
And thank you, Jordan. And we will close the forum part with the 3 candidates from Ward 1. Sheena, you will be first. Sheena Winter.
Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity. I feel that we agree on a lot of things, but what I would like to point out is that I'm a doer. I'm not a talker, and I like to get things done. I've built a business. I want to give back. I want to serve the city, and I feel that that I can uniquely contribute. And so I'm just really proud to be a Missoulian. I am concerned about us losing our working class roots, and that some of the great opportunities that have been afforded to me in Missoula might not be afforded, are not being afforded to my children and younger other people, and that's not okay. And I'm want to be part of the solution with, again, common sense, pragmatic, fiscally responsible ways of fixing some of our problems, and that a lot of us frankly agree are issues. And thank you for having me. I'd love your endorsement.
Hey, thank you, Sheena. Jane Van Fossen.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate tonight. I do bring diversity to this particular group. I'm an independent. I am neither affiliated with the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party. Missoula municipal elections are, at least in theory, nonpartisan. What I will bring to the table is real diversity in terms of my personal experience and in terms of my commitment to problem solving. I know how to get under the hood on policies. I know how to investigate. I know how to listen to people. I know how to work cooperatively in some very diverse groups. Many times I have been in decision-making situations where I was the only female in the room, and I've managed to make my points successfully and managed to win the day on occasion. But I do understand that being one of 12 is a negotiating process and a collegial process, and we won't get anywhere without cooperating with our cohorts on council. And I look forward to doing that. We've got some excellent folks, and the people who showed up tonight are Missoula's lucky. Let me put it that way. And its future potential leaders. Thank you for your time.
And thank you, Jane. Okay, closing it out, Jennifer Savage, Ward 1.
Thank you again for allowing us this opportunity. It's been really great to hear from everybody and great to see everyone. Thank you for taking our health into consideration last week as we postponed this. And I appreciate that we were able to do this over Zoom and do it as quickly as you were able to pivot. I'm running for council because I'm interested in talking about housing. I'm interested in talking about COVID recovery. I'm interested in talking about the climate. I'm also interested in elevating voices that aren't often heard. I am tenacious. I'm a hard worker. I'm a quick study. I would really appreciate your endorsement. I believe this work is about relationship building, and I know how to build relationships. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And on behalf of the Missoula County Democratic Central Committee, I thank you guys for your time this evening, for your thoughtful answers, for filling out the questionnaires, which are not untedious. That's a double negative, meaning yes, we understand they are. We very much appreciate those thoughtful answers. And most of all, we appreciate the fact that you are running for office in this city that we all clearly love so dearly. The more candidates, good candidates like you that we have, the better off we all are. So thank you very much for everything you're doing right now, and good luck in your respective races. Thank you. Shibu,